Have you ever sat in your car after parking in your driveway, staring blankly at the steering wheel, unable to open the door and walk inside? Or maybe you've found yourself sitting at the edge of your bed late at night, staring at the floor in the quiet dark, realizing that you just couldn't bring yourself to take the very next step. Not because you were being lazy, not because you lacked care, and not because you were unwilling to try, but because somewhere deep down inside your chest, the fuel completely ran out. We live so much of our lives running on pure momentum. We push through long, demanding workdays, dodge endless streams of notifications, and carry the quiet, heavy pressure to keep up appearances for everyone around us. We smile when we are tired. We say, "I'm fine," when we are falling apart. And we mistake our ability to keep dragging ourselves forward for actual strength. We tell ourselves that as long as we are still moving, we are doing okay. But there is a massive difference between living and simply refusing to stop. Then, one ordinary afternoon, something tiny happens. A simple misplaced set of keys, a minor delay in traffic, or a glass of water spilling on the counter suddenly feels like an insurmountable wall. A moment that would normally take 2 seconds to fix suddenly brings you to your knees, leaving you frozen, breathless, or on the verge of tears. In that quiet, heavy second, the illusion shatters. You realize that you aren't just tired. You are utterly empty. That sudden, crushing drop in your chest isn't a personal failure, and it isn't a sign that you are broken or weak. It is your physical body calling a halt when your mind has spent months, or even years, refusing to slow down. Your nervous system is finally whispering, or perhaps screaming, that it cannot keep borrowing energy from a bank account that has been at zero for far too long. It is the moment where your system gently but firmly steps in to protect you from your own relentlessness. When you reach this place, the world outside doesn't automatically stop, but everything inside you slows down to a painful crawl. The things that used to bring you simple comfort feel like heavy chores. Talking to the people you love feels like an exhausting task. Even making a basic decision, like what to eat or what to wear, feels like solving a complex puzzle. You might feel a strange mixture of profound numbness and overwhelming emotional sensitivity all at once. You are standing in the middle of your own life, feeling like a ghost looking in, wondering how you spent so much time giving pieces of yourself away until there was nothing left for you. If you are in that parked car right now, metaphorically or literally, I want you to know that it is okay to just sit there for a moment. You do not have to fix everything in this exact minute. You do not have to figure out how you are going to handle tomorrow, or next week, or the next 10 years. You don't need to put on a brave face, and you don't need to apologize to anyone for reaching your limit. Human beings were never designed to be perpetual motion machines. We were made to ebb and flow, to rest and rebuild, to fall down and take our time getting back up. Recognizing that your tank is empty is actually the very first step toward healing. It is the tender, honest turning point where you stop running away from your exhaustion and finally turn around to meet it with kindness. It is the moment you stop fighting yourself and admit that you need care too. Before we dive into understanding what is happening inside your body and mind right now, I want to invite you to pause with me. Right where you are, let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Release the tension in your stomach. Take a slow, deep, full breath in and let it all out with a long, soft sigh. I want to invite you to leave a comment below with this simple, gentle affirmation. I give myself permission to pause and rest today. Write those words out, speak them out loud, or just hold them quietly in your heart. Let those words be the anchor that grounds you as we begin this gentle journey back home to yourself. When you are emotionally running on empty, the common advice to just carry on, dig deeper, or stay positive can feel almost insulting. For months, or maybe even years, you might have relied on sheer willpower to navigate major life transitions, demanding careers, or supporting loved ones through their own dark valleys. You trained yourself to override the quiet, persistent signals of fatigue. You made a habit of telling yourself that you would take a break once the next project was finished, once the kids were settled, once the crisis passed, or once the next goal was safely reached. You treated your endurance like an infinite resource, assuming that if you just tried a little harder, you could outrun the collapse. But the human nervous system does not operate like a logical task list, nor does it respond to tough love when it is exhausted. When your system remains in a constant state of high alert, perpetually bracing for the next demand or managing subtle, chronic stress, it eventually switches from active strain into total shutoff to protect you. Pushing harder against a system that has entered self-preservation mode only deepens the exhaustion. It is like slamming your foot down on the gas pedal when the car is completely out of fuel. It doesn't make you go any faster. It just damages the engine. For so long, pushing through was your primary survival strategy. It was how you got through the hard seasons, how you earned approval, and how you kept your world from falling apart. It worked for a while, and it is completely understandable why you kept returning to that well. But there comes a point where the very tool that saved you begins to break you. Your body begins to reject the pressure. The mental tricks you used to motivate yourself, the strict self-talk, the artificial urgency, the guilt, suddenly lose their power. You find that you simply cannot force yourself to care or move in the way you used to, no matter how much is at stake. This shift can cause a profound internal panic. When your usual method of operating stops working, you might feel like you are losing control of who you are. You might ask yourself why you can't just tough it out like you used to, or why everyone else seems capable of managing their lives while you are falling behind. But the truth is, your body refusing to keep pushing is not a defect. It is a wisdom. It is your physical and emotional baseline standing up for your survival when your conscious mind refuses to set a boundary. It is your system saying, "We cannot survive under these conditions anymore. The rules have to change." Trying to use effort to cure a condition caused by excessive effort is a trap. You cannot achieve rest through aggressive striving. You cannot force your nervous system to calm down by giving it strict orders or feeling ashamed of its weakness. The harder you fight against your current state of exhaustion, the more threat signals you send to a body that is already terrified and overwhelmed. Realizing that your old strategies of endless effort, hypervigilance, and quiet persistence are no longer serving you is not a defeat. It is not a sign that you have failed at being strong. In reality, it is the first real act of true self-awareness. It takes immense bravery to drop your hands, stop fighting the fatigue, and admit that the way you have been living is no longer sustainable. It requires deep courage to acknowledge that willpower alone cannot fix a heart and body that simply need tenderness, time, and true rest. When you stop pushing, you make room for something far more transformative than endurance. You make room for real recovery. You allow yourself to move away from the harsh demand of performance and step toward the quiet, gentle work of healing. Exhaustion does not always look like dramatic tears, sudden outbursts, or visible distress. Often, it shows up in the quietest, most mundane moments of our ordinary days. It creeps in through the small cracks in our routine, disguising itself as minor frustration, forgetfulness, or a subtle detachment from the world around us. Because these signs are so quiet, we often miss them or brush them off as temporary moods, pushing ourselves forward until the weight becomes entirely unbearable. You might notice yourself standing in the middle of your kitchen, staring blankly at a simple recipe on a screen, unable to decide what to prepare for dinner because making just one more choice feels like an impossible burden. You stand there, frozen, overwhelmed by the sheer number of tiny decisions required to put a meal together, until you simply close the tab and walk away hungry. Or perhaps you pick up a book you used to love, only to read the very same page 3 times, the words sliding past your focus without leaving a single trace in your mind. Your focus is gone, not because you lack intellect, but because your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by the heavy background noise of survival. These quiet signals extend into your relationships and daily interactions in ways that can leave you feeling deeply confused. You might find yourself quietly withdrawing from text messages or phone calls from close friends, people you truly love and value, not because you don't care about them, but because holding space for someone else's life feels like asking a drained battery to output power it simply does not have. The thought of engaging in casual small talk or answering a basic question about your day feels like running a marathon. You begin to isolate yourself, seeking solitude not out of peace, but out of a desperate need to protect whatever tiny sliver of internal energy you have left. In your body, the signals are just as subtle and persistent. You might carry a perpetual tightness in your throat, a dull ache behind your eyes, or a subtle, constant tension in your jaw that you only notice when you consciously try to relax. You might find yourself breathing shallowly, holding your breath for seconds at a time without realizing it, as if your chest is permanently bracing for bad news. Even moments meant for rest become complicated. You lie down completely exhausted, yet your mind stays wired, spinning in circles about things you forgot to do or worrying about problems that haven't happened yet. It is so easy to misinterpret these moments. We tend to judge ourselves harshly when we notice these changes, labeling ourselves as lazy, unmotivated, moody, or incompetent. We worry that we are losing our edge or that we are failing the people who count on us. But these subtle signs are not character flaws, and they are certainly not evidence that you are losing your competence as a person. They are gentle, direct messages from a wisdom deep inside you, a system that has been carrying far too much weight for far too long, asking you to lighten the load before it drops everything entirely. When your nervous system is overwhelmed, it turns down the volume on everything non-essential so it can preserve energy for basic survival. Your creativity, your patience, your decision-making capacity, and your ability to connect deeply are temporarily scaled back. Understanding this changes everything. Instead of meeting your brain fog, irritability, or fatigue with harsh self-criticism, you can begin to see them for what they truly are: simple, honest requests for rest. Recognizing these quiet signals is the moment you stop blaming yourself for being human and start listening to the gentle warnings your body has been sending you all along. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Bringing light to our deeply ingrained habit of constant productivity requires us to step directly into the uncomfortable quiet we usually try to run from. For so long, staying busy has served as a reliable shield, a protective armor holding off the heavy work of processing difficult transitions, heartbreaks, lingering doubts, or deep emotional fatigue. When we are always moving, always doing, and always striving, we never have to face the quiet space where our suppressed feelings reside. Busy became our safest hiding place. When you finally decide to stop moving, or when your body simply forces you to halt, all that unexpressed fatigue and those quiet worries immediately rise to the surface. It can feel deeply uncomfortable, almost terrifying. Sitting still, with a hyper-vigilant internal rhythm, feels inherently wrong at first, much like trying to step off a train moving at full speed. Your heart might race, your mind might scream at you to get up and do something, and a subtle wave of anxiety might wash over you. You are so accustomed to the constant hum of productivity that stillness feels less like peace and more like an impending threat. In our modern world, standing still requires a massive amount of courage. Everything around us rewards constant output, quick turnarounds, and visible achievement. We are taught to measure our worth by how much we accomplish in a day, how fast we respond, and how well we manage a towering pile of responsibilities. Choosing to pause when every message from society tells you to keep going feels like an act of quiet rebellion. It demands that you confront the deep-seated fear that if you slow down, you will fall behind, let people down, or discover that you are not enough without your busyness. Yet, entering that initial discomfort without immediately reaching for a quick distraction or trying to fix how you feel is where true internal repair begins. When you sit with yourself in the quiet, you are finally giving your nervous system the space it needs to discharge years of stored tension. You are allowing the suppressed emotions to be seen, felt, and honored at last. Rest is not merely the absence of work. It is the active, brave choice to stay present with yourself when staying present is hard. Standing still means learning to sit gently with the noise inside your mind without trying to control it. It means letting the tears fall if they need to fall, letting the fatigue wash over your limbs without feeling guilty, and accepting that it is okay to not have everything figured out right now. It is in this quiet space, stripped of pretense and constant effort, that you finally begin to heal. By daring to stand still, you stop treating yourself like a machine that needs repair and start treating yourself like a human being that deserves quiet grace. To move out of this state of total depletion, we have to gently teach our internal body that the present moment is safe enough to finally drop its guard. When you have spent a long period bracing against emotional stress, navigating unexpected life shifts, or carrying the quiet weight of survival, relaxation can paradoxically feel threatening or unnatural. Your whole system stays on high alert, scanning the horizon for the next challenge to appear, terrified that if it relaxes for even a single second, it will be caught completely off guard. When your body has spent months or years in a state of defense, keeping its guard up becomes its baseline mode of operation. Survival mode is exhausting, but to a hyper-vigilant nervous system, it feels predictable. Peace, on the other hand, feels unfamiliar. And because it is unfamiliar, your mind misinterprets quiet moments as dangerous lulls before a storm. You sit down to rest, but your heart starts to race. Your muscles refuse to untie themselves, and your thoughts spin frantically in search of a problem to solve. This is why you cannot simply command yourself to just relax. You cannot force a frightened, overworked body into peace through willpower alone. Shift your attention away from trying to fix your entire life, resolving all your long-term worries, or planning 3 steps ahead. Bring your focus completely down to the immediate physical space right around you, right in this very second. Look around the room you are sitting in. Notice the solid, unyielding support of the chair beneath you, holding your weight without any effort required from you. Feel the cool, ambient air resting against your skin, and tune into the subtle, steady rhythm of your breathing. Notice how your body moves slightly with every breath, without you ever having to remind it to do so. These simple physical anchor points act as quiet signals to your deepest internal instincts. They provide direct evidence that in this single, uninterrupted slice of time, there is no immediate danger to fight and no sudden crisis to flee. Transitioning from self-protection to true repair is not a sudden, dramatic event. It is a slow, tender negotiation with yourself. It happens in tiny, intentional increments. It looks like allowing your shoulders to drop just half an inch lower away from your ears. It looks like taking one long, slow exhale that empties your lungs completely, letting out a quiet sigh that you've been holding inside all day. It looks like unclenching your jaw, softening the space between your eyebrows, and letting your hands rest heavy and open in your lap. You do not need to solve tomorrow's problems right now. You do not need to fix your past mistakes, figure out your entire future, or prove your worth to anyone in this quiet space. Your only task in this exact moment is to allow yourself to exist without performing. Acknowledge that right here, right now, in this small pocket of peace, you are completely safe. Every time you offer yourself this soft moment of presence, you rewire your system, showing it that it is finally okay to lay its heavy armor down and begin the quiet work of healing. When every action in your daily life begins to feel like a heavy, impossible obligation, true emotional restoration does not come from pushing yourself harder or trying to manage your time better. It comes from replacing strict, unforgiving performance with tender, non-demanding care. When you are running on empty, even the smallest tasks, getting out of bed, making a phone call, or putting away laundry, can feel like climbing a mountain while carrying a heavy pack. Your mind tells you that you ought to be doing more, faster, and better, adding a layer of shame on top of an already profound exhaustion. But trying to force yourself to perform when your spirit is weary only fractures your internal balance even deeper. Consider for a moment how you speak to yourself when you notice your energy fading during the middle of the afternoon. When your focus drifts, your eyes grow heavy, and your body practically begs for a break. What is the tone of your internal voice? Do you offer yourself harsh self-criticism, calling yourself weak or lazy for not doing more? Or do you speak to yourself with the same kind, patient warmth you would naturally offer to a dear friend who is noticeably tired? So many of us have been conditioned to use harshness as our primary tool for motivation, believing that if we aren't hard on ourselves, we will simply give up. But critical self-talk is just another demand placed on a system that is already drowning under pressure. True healing does not require grand, sweeping life overhauls, expensive retreats, or complicated self-improvement regimes that end up feeling like just another item on your to-do list. In fact, genuine recovery thrives in the smallest, quietest, and most unglamorous choices you make throughout your day. It lives in the decision to grant yourself permission to operate at a slower, softer pace without feeling guilty about it. Acts of softness are subtle choices that expect nothing in return. It is stopping to drink a warm glass of water while quietly looking out the window for 5 unhurried minutes, letting your mind wander wherever it needs to go. It is stepping away from your screens during lunch, closing your eyes, and allowing the silence to wash over you instead of scrolling through endless streams of information. It is allowing yourself to leave an unimportant task unfinished for the night, letting the dishes sit in the sink or leaving a message unread. Because choosing your peace in this moment matters far more than keeping everything pristine. These small, quiet choices send a powerful signal directly to your inner world. Your well-being matters more than absolute perfection, and your worth as a human being is not tied to your productivity. Every time you choose gentleness over force, you interrupt the belief that you must constantly earn your right to exist through effort. You begin to create a safe, internal environment where your body and mind can finally let down their guard. Softness also means honoring your dynamic energy levels instead of fighting them. Some days, your capacity will naturally be higher, and on other days, simply getting through the morning is a massive victory. Softness is looking at your depleted state and saying, "It is completely okay that this is all I have to give today." It is offering yourself grace when you drop the ball, when you are forgetful, or when you don't have the emotional energy to be cheerful. When you replace relentless expectation with small acts of kindness, you gradually dismantle the internal pressure that caused your depletion in the first place. You learn that taking care of yourself isn't something you only do when everything else is finished. It is the foundation that allows you to live fully. Step by step, soft choice by soft choice, you rebuild trust with yourself, creating a life where rest is no longer an emergency response to burnout, but a gentle, permanent rhythm of grace. Carl Jung noted that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Accepting yourself completely means acknowledging your human limits without a shred of guilt, especially when those limits require saying a quiet, firm no to the world around you. Many of us have spent our entire lives wearing our availability as a proud badge of honor. We take pride in being the dependable person who always steps up, the compassionate friend who always listens, the reliable coworker who always takes on the extra workload, and the steady rock who holds everything together when things fall apart. We love being the one people can rely on because it makes us feel valued, safe, and needed. But every time you say yes to an external request, when your internal battery is completely depleted, you borrow energy from a system that is already entirely bankrupt. You are essentially signing a check that your spirit cannot cash. You take on another task, attend another gathering, or hold space for another person's drama, while quietly abandoning your own desperate need for quiet and rest. Over time, this constant betrayal of your own limits creates a deep, lingering resentment, not just toward the people asking things of you, but toward yourself for being unable to stop giving away what you do not have. Setting boundaries is not about building cold walls to keep the world out, nor is it an act of selfishness or unkindness. It is simply about building a fence around the tiny bit of energy you have left so you can slowly rebuild your life from the inside out. It is the realization that your energy is not an infinite public resource that anyone can claim whenever they please. If you give everything away to satisfy the expectations of others, you leave absolute zero for your own basic survival, let alone your healing. For someone who is naturally a giver, setting a boundary feels intensely terrifying. The moment you prepare to say no, a wave of familiar anxiety rushes in. You worry that people will be disappointed in you, that they will think you are selfish, or that they will stop loving and valuing you if you are no longer endlessly useful to them. Your mind scrambles to construct elaborate excuses or detailed explanations just to justify your simple need for space. But you do not need a tragic excuse or a dramatic reason to protect your peace. Your fatigue alone is a completely valid reason. Saying, "I would love to help, but I simply don't have the capacity for that right now," is one of the most fundamental practices of self-preservation you will ever learn. It is a sentence that honors both the other person and your own truth. It acknowledges that while their request might be entirely reasonable, your current internal bandwidth cannot accommodate it. You do not need to over-explain, apologize profusely, or offer a compromise that secretly drains you. A gentle, clear boundary delivered with kindness is enough. Protecting your internal space also means setting boundaries with the noise and demands of the modern world. It means stepping away from the endless cycle of staying constantly updated, muting group chats that drain your spirit, and declining invitations to events that feel like heavy chores rather than uplifting moments. It means giving yourself permission to go offline, to leave messages unread for a while, and to exist in a space where no one is demanding a piece of your attention. When you begin to set these boundaries, some people might be surprised, disappointed, or even frustrated. People who are accustomed to your endless availability may struggle when you suddenly step back, but their reaction is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is simply proof that the boundary was desperately needed in the first place. The people who truly love you and care about your well-being will always respect your need to rest, even if it means they get a little less of you for a season. By guarding your internal space, you stop treating your well-being as an afterthought. You begin to treat your energy with the deep respect it deserves. Every time you say no to an external demand that you cannot handle, you are saying a profound, loving yes to your own healing, your own recovery, and your own life. When we are emotionally overwhelmed and utterly drained, our minds tend to constantly wander away from where we actually are, either endlessly reviewing past regrets or frantically worrying about upcoming events. This relentless mental wandering keeps your body trapped in a subtle, continuous state of alarm. Your mind spins through scenarios that haven't happened yet, playing out worst-case outcomes, and trying to brace yourself for every possible challenge, while simultaneously replaying past conversations and wishing you had handled things differently. You might be physically sitting in a peaceful room, surrounded by safety, but internally, you are living through 1,000 hypothetical storms. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real, immediate threat and a terrifying thought, so it keeps your pulse racing, your muscles tight, and your breathing shallow. Reclaiming presence means dropping anchor, right where you are, through simple physical sensations, pulling your awareness out of the chaotic future and the unchangeable past, and placing it gently back into the physical reality of this exact moment. It is the practice of remembering that right here, right now, in this single, uninterrupted second, you are fundamentally okay. Presence is not something you have to force through intense meditation or complicated mental exercises, especially when your brain is already exhausted. Instead, it is found in the softest, most ordinary sensory experiences available to you right now. It is holding a warm mug in both hands, feeling the heat radiate into your fingers, and focusing entirely on that sensation for 3 full seconds. It is listening intentionally to the steady, comforting patter of rain against the window pane, letting the sound fill the room and wash over your thoughts. It is tracing the texture of a wooden desk with your fingertips, noticing the subtle grooves, the cool surface, and the solid ground holding you up. These simple sensory points act as gentle, unyielding anchors. They bring your attention right back into your body, interrupting the frantic cycle of worry that keeps your system on high alert. Every time you bring your focus back to what you can physically touch, hear, see, or smell, you send a direct signal to your nervous system that the storm is not happening in this room. You break the illusion that you have to solve your entire life all at once. When you spend so much time running on empty, living in the present can feel unfamiliar, even strange at first. You might notice how much energy you were spending just trying to anticipate the next demand or shield yourself from potential pain. But as you practice dropping anchor into the present moment, even for just a few seconds at a time, you begin to discover a quiet reservoir of calm that was hidden beneath all the mental noise. In the present, uninterrupted moment, there is rarely a crisis actually happening. The catastrophic future you are worrying about is just a collection of thoughts, and the past that heavy-heartedness drags behind you is already gone. Right now, in this precise breath, you don't have to carry the weight of tomorrow's obligations, and you don't have to fix yesterday's mistakes. There is only this single step, this single sensation, this single quiet breath. Reclaiming your presence is an act of gentle self-compassion. It is how you gather the scattered pieces of your attention and bring them back home to yourself. Every time you choose to step out of the frantic race of your mind and simply feel the ground beneath your feet, you give your nervous system permission to pause, soften, and begin the deep, quiet work of restoration. We live in a fast-paced world that demands quick fixes, instant turnarounds, and rapid resilience, tempting us to treat emotional recovery like a simple task to be completed by the weekend. We want to apply a quick solution to our exhaustion, hoping that a single good night's sleep, a weekend off, or a few days of self-care will magically erase months or years of accumulated strain. When we don't bounce back immediately, we become frustrated with ourselves. We wonder why the fatigue still lingers, why our energy remains fragile, or why we still feel so deeply tender. We start treating our own healing process like a project with a tight deadline, adding unnecessary pressure to a spirit that is already completely exhausted. But genuine internal repair does not work like a mechanical repair, and it cannot be forced to move faster through sheer impatience. Deep emotional recovery moves at its own steady, unhurried pace, much like the slow, quiet change of seasons. You cannot force a winter tree to bloom overnight just because you are tired of the cold, and you cannot demand that your nervous system fully reset before it truly feels safe to do so. Healing is an organic, non-linear process that unfolds in its own time, requiring an immense amount of patience, grace, and understanding from you along the way. As you navigate this journey, you will quickly realize that recovery rarely looks like a continuous, perfectly straight line pointing upward. There will be days when you feel a gentle return of warmth, clarity, and lightness, where you feel like yourself again and believe you have finally turned a corner. But then, without any obvious warning or trigger, a day will come where the heavy fog returns, your energy plummets, and the familiar weight settles back into your chest. You might wake up feeling just as exhausted as you did at the very beginning, and a quiet wave of panic might whisper that you are moving backward, that all your effort was wasted, and that you are right back at square one. It is so vital to understand that this natural fluctuation is not a sign of failure, nor is it proof that you are broken. These quieter, heavier days are not reversals of your progress. They are simply part of the natural rhythm of recovery. Healing happens in waves, in cycles of expansion and rest. When your system feels a little bit safer, it clears out a new layer of stored tension, which can temporarily leave you feeling tired or vulnerable all over again. Bouncing back and forth between feeling good and feeling weary does not mean you are failing at healing. It means your body is actively doing the deep, quiet work of integration. When you stop measuring your personal progress by how quickly you bounce back or how much you can accomplish in a day, you open up a sacred space for deep, lasting transformation. You stop treating your fatigue as an enemy to be defeated and begin treating it as a wise, protective friend that is simply asking you to slow down. You learn to honor the days when your capacity is low with the exact same kindness and respect you give to the days when you feel strong and capable. Allow yourself the time it actually takes to rebuild your foundation, without setting an arbitrary deadline on your peace. You do not need to rush this process to prove anything to anyone else, nor do you need to justify why your recovery is taking longer than you expected. Your journey back to balance belongs entirely to you. Embrace the slow, gentle rhythm of your healing, trusting that even on the quietest, heaviest days when it feels like nothing is happening, your spirit and your body are quietly working together behind the scenes, slowly bringing you back home to yourself. Carl Jung beautifully stated, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." The long, exhausting period of emotional depletion you have been carrying does not define your future, nor does it permanently limit your capacity for genuine joy, deep peace, and quiet fulfillment. It is not a permanent stain on your character, nor is it a final sentence on your life. Instead, this profound pause is an invitation, a quiet, sacred calling to completely rebuild your relationship with yourself on a brand new foundation of respect, patience, radical honesty, and unconditional love. For so long, you may have lived your life treating yourself like a tool to be used, a resource to be mined, or a performer required to earn your place on the stage of life. You pushed your body past its natural limits, silenced your internal warnings, and placed everyone else's comfort, needs, and expectations far above your own basic well-being. You learned to measure your self-worth by how much you could endure, how much you could produce, and how flawlessly you could hold everything together without ever dropping the ball. But living that way required you to constantly abandon yourself, walking away from your own internal home just to keep the outside world running smoothly. Returning home to yourself means deciding, once and for all, that you will no longer leave your own side. It means making a quiet, binding promise that you will never again trade your internal peace for external approval, and that you will no longer betray your body's limits just to prove your strength to a world that will always ask for more. As you step forward from this moment, remember that honoring your limits is never a sign of weakness, failure, or incompetence. It is the very foundation of true, sustainable strength. True strength is not the ability to carry an impossible weight until your back breaks. True strength is having the wisdom and self-respect to put the weight down when it becomes too heavy. You do not have to prove your worth to anyone through constant output, continuous resilience, or endless sacrifice. You are worthy of love, dignity, and rest simply because you exist, exactly as you are in this breath, without needing to perform or produce a single thing to earn it. Coming home to yourself looks like treating your mind, heart, and body with the same gentle tenderness you would extend to a loved one who has traveled a long, hard road. It looks like listening to the quiet whispers of fatigue before they are forced to become a physical scream. It looks like trusting your own instincts, honoring your need for quiet space, and allowing yourself to feel whatever you are feeling without judgment or shame. It means forgiving yourself for all the times you pushed too hard, for all the boundaries you failed to set, and for all the ways you neglected your own needs while trying to save everyone else. This period of depletion, as heavy and frightening as it has felt, has stripped away the false belief that you are invincible, making room for something far more beautiful: the truth that you are human. And being human is a delicate, miraculous thing that requires care, nourishment, and time to simply be. You do not need to rush out into the world and rebuild your entire life overnight. You don't need a grand, dramatic transformation or a complex master plan for the future. You only need to take one small, gentle step at a time, keeping your hand softly resting on your own heart along the way. Every time you choose to rest instead of force, every time you say no to an unsustainable demand, and every time you listen to what your inner self truly needs, you are taking another gentle, deliberate step back home to yourself. Welcome back. If you are listening to these words right now, take a moment to look back on how far you have come in this conversation. You entered this space carrying a heavy, silent fatigue, a weight that perhaps no one else in your daily life fully understood or even noticed. You spent so long trying to hold everything together, trying to prove your strength, and trying to outrun the deep exhaustion in your soul. But today, you chose to sit still. You chose to listen, to breathe, and to honor the quiet truth of your body and mind. Resetting your nervous system and recovering from emotional depletion is not something that happens in a single, sudden moment of awakening. It is a slow, beautiful practice of returning to yourself day after day, breath by breath, and boundary by boundary. There will still be moments when the world demands too much of you, or when old habits of overworking try to whisper that you aren't doing enough. But now, you carry a new kind of awareness. You know that stepping back is not quitting, resting is not a failure, and listening to your limits is the highest form of self-respect. You do not have to walk this path alone, nor do you have to do it perfectly. Every small choice to be soft with yourself, every moment you pause instead of push, and every time you choose peace over performance is a quiet victory. You are slowly building a life where you no longer have to burn yourself out just to feel worthy of existing. As we close this time together, take one final deep breath. Let your ribs expand. Hold the softness at the top for a brief second, and let it go completely with a long, gentle exhale. To anchor this commitment to your own healing and to leave a light for others who might be walking through their own dark valleys of fatigue, leave a comment below with this final affirmation. I am learning to honor my limits, and I trust the quiet rhythm of my healing. Let those words settle deep into your heart. Thank you for listening, for caring for yourself, and for having the courage to pause. Take gentle care of yourself today.